What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 121. As ever, I'm your host, George St. Ledger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Now, I'll confess at the start of the show, this has been a bit of a manic one for myself personally. I've got in just about 15 minutes ago and set everything up, and I forgot to put my headphones in. So, as I say, as always, Louis and Lewis, how are you doing? Explain it through whilst I connect my headphones.
Yeah, not too bad. We had some absolute banger series to get into, especially a certain Game 7. I'm sure we'll talk about a certain man where greatest point guard of all time has been doing the rounds. There's stuff like this always does when someone of his stature has a great game. Maybe we'll get into that, maybe we won't, but we've at least got some bangers, and including, a bit of Dylan Brooks slander, I'm sure, will come as well.
Yeah, nice long weekend. We should mention as well down here in the UK. So feeling pretty relaxed. Could also stay up to watch some of these fine events. Well, some of them are at some reasonable times these days. Actually, it's the West Coast ones, that Sacramento Golden State one, which has been kind of difficult to follow throughout the series has been on. But we got to watch Game 7 at a pretty reasonable time, so that was nice. But yeah, this is there's been some interesting ones, hasn't there? We're kind of getting into the thick of it right now, and I honestly feel like, going into this playoffs, I was pretty confident that the Bucks were going to win the championship. So it kind of thrown all up in the air at the moment.
I'm back. I am back. Well, yeah. So I like yourself, Louis, I'm in agreement there. I was expecting the Bucks to win it all, so it is a spanner in the works of what has occurred. I missed the Steph gamer last night, 50-pointer. I was away, and I haven't even seen highlights. This is the least I've been involved in the playoffs yet. So all I know is Steph dropped a 50 bomb, and I saw one of you. I can't remember what one it was, that the Kings were doing a choke job. And then I saw that the Miami Heat won, and that maybe Jimmy Butler got injured. That's what I've seen. If that's wrong, then I'll hold my hands up. But that's what I've heard.
No, I guess we'll get. We'll get in. We should probably talk about the Bucks one first, because that happened the longest ago. But in terms of the Jimmy injury, I can't remember who it was, but someone stepped on the back of his foot and he rolled his ankle as he was driving to the basket. It didn't look like it was too bad, but with those ankle injuries, you can never be certain. Sometimes someone's fine for the next game, sometimes they miss a few weeks because they've done something to their ligament or they've sprained it, something like that. But as the performance overall, as you two said, I also picked the Bucks to win it all. I think in our bracket we had them to win it all, I assume, if we all picked it. And over the season, I think I've slandered the Heat quite a bit mainly about how their offense is run and how sometimes it can be pretty horrendous. But, you got to hold your hands up and say, playoffs, Jimmy Butler just took a couple of the games over. We've seen a couple of the all-time great playoff performances for a while over this past week or so. And one of them definitely belongs, well, he had a couple, but the 53, 56 definitely that helped him win is the one that stands out. And also, we were talking, I know we were having a conversation about choke jobs and what you have to do or teams have to be to qualify for a choke job. And even though Giannis had a massive game and he was carrying a bit of an injury, 10 of 23 is a bit of a choke job at the line. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, I did see the clip about that was going viral in terms of Giannis being like, this is what failure is. We posted that on our YouTube channel anyway, but it was more of that. I do agree with him in part, but I also don't. The season, if you look at it as a whole, no, it's not. But if you look at it in a isotopic situation of that season, of course it's a failure. The first seed goes out to the 8th seed. It is a failure of a season.
Yeah,
it's not anything else than that. It is black and white.
Yeah, and I guess the comeback would that be he didn't play in a couple games. He maybe wasn't right in the games that he did play, I guess. I don't think that was the overriding issue, and I think that overall, I I said it in the last podcast. I think that the Bucks, should have had probably enough to get through the Heat without Giannis. Even they won game 2, obviously blast them out with like a ridiculous scoring, shooting percentage, which wasn't going to be replicated. But I think a lot of I don't like to go too hard on like coaching decisions because I don't think overall they're that important. I guess when it comes to when it comes to basketball anyway, it's a bit different when we'll talk about football or something like that. I feel like the coach can only do so much, draw up plays, etc., rotations. But I do feel like there was just some adjustments that needed to be made at some stage. And I think we've had this a couple of times where I think it was against the Heat where they've been like, well, Giannis is the best defender. We're supposedly one of the best defenders in the league. Defensive player of the year before, obviously, why did he not guarding Jimmy Butler one-on-one? That type of thing. That's just not how their defensive system works. So I can understand why Budenholzer is reluctant to come away from it a little bit. But I think at some stage there did need to be an adjustment made because I think there wasn't. I mean, the Heat weren't going to win that game unless Jimmy Butler like carried them over the line, really. And the way he was just driving at, he wasn't scared of Brook Lopez in the paint, and that's one of the best rim protectors you're going to get in basketball, really. He wasn't scared of Drew Holiday guarding him whatsoever. So I think something needed to be done at some stage. But, I think it's definitely a failure from an isolated standpoint of they were the massive, overwhelming favourite. They were probably a favourite to win the championship overall, and they've got the best player in basketball. So you would say, what people, people, I guess, will debate that now. But like one of the best players in basketball, when you have that, people will be like, oh, they should win an NBA championship or at least get to the NBA finals. So to go out in the first round to a team that lost to the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in and everyone was writing them off, don't think that can be really written off. I understand what he means in terms of you learn from your failures, but that doesn't mean it isn't a failure, if that makes sense. It's just like you learn from it.
Completely. My only take from that whole series, there was a few weird things. Obviously, the last game with Coach Bud saving his timeouts for next year was a strange decision. But in general, like Pat Connaughton and Joe Ingles playing as much as they did, and Grayson Allen, Jay Crowder playing nothing pretty much the whole season, the whole series, I should say, not the whole season. Yeah. And then I was quite disappointed in Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez in that series. It's just the whole Bucks team was in general disappointing. But it's more of that if Drew Holiday is going to be like this sort of I'm the main defender of this team, excluding Giannis in the perimeter side, in the paint side of things. I was hoping for a bit more of a. I know you can't stop like greatness when it happens, and that was what this series was necessarily for Jimmy Butler. But it was a bit of a blemish to see Drew Holiday sort of. I mean, Jimmy Butler was toying with him at the end of it. Yeah. That's how he was sort of saying it. And coming out in a press conference and be like, I'm seriously considering retiring in 2 years' time. That sort of speaks to the mentality in which Jimmy Butler got the heart of this Bucks team in. But we won't sit on this series long enough. We'll talk about the Lakers getting rid of the Grizz. Bit of a toss-up, I'd say, when we were deciding who we thought were going to go through from the Lakers and the Grizzlies. It is mad to think that there was so much... I wouldn't say slander on the Warriors, but there was a lot of slander on the Lakers at the start of the year and throughout the year. And now we've got a Lakers-Warriors where one of them's going to end up being in the conference finals for it. Everyone's excited, I'd imagine, to see this playoff series that comes around, 5th time that they're matching up. How are you feeling around the Lakers getting past this? And now, obviously, well, we're going to talk about the Warriors later, but how are you feeling about this today?
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers deserve this, everything that was said about them at the start of the season and throughout the first half, to be fair, because they were terrible up until the trade deadline and they made their changes. But now, obviously, they beat the Grizzlies. I think did we pick them as a whole to go through? I feel like we did.
I think we did.
The Grizzlies.
Yeah.
I picked the Grizzlies.
I think me and you said Lakers.
I think me and you did, yeah.
Just quickly, Danny, there will be a solo video. It will just be after this a little bit later on, probably in around an hour or so. So, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and I think one of the main takeaways, well, two of the main takeaways was one, I think I said this throughout this series, was you see the value the Lakers have in their role players and the squad as a whole, as opposed to just looking at your 2 stars, because this wasn't a vintage LeBron series. They didn't play badly, but he didn't take over the series like Jimmy Butler did against the Bucks. You saw, Rui had his big games. D'Lo had his big game last to close them out. Austin Reeves had some big games. And when you've got a squad like that, along with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, then you do have the recipe to be able to go far in the playoffs. And on Anthony Davis, I think the other thing that really stood out to me was just how fantastic he was on the defensive end for them. I think the total blocks he had, I think it was 24, is the most in a 6-game series in the playoffs for like nearly a decade. And just that and the steals together and just how well he played against that Grizzlies team consistently, which is what you want to see. He didn't score, at the level we want him to consistently, and that he'll probably have to for them to really go far in the playoffs. But on the defensive end, he was just a monster and showed that when healthy, he is a cut above even a lot of these people that we, put forward for Defensive Player of the Year and win Defensive Player of the Year, like I say, Jaren Jackson Jr. or Brook Lopez. AD, when fully healthy, is just on a different level to them.
Yeah, and I'll approach it from the Memphis standpoint. I think there's a few things this team needs going forward. Obviously, they're missing a couple players, we should say, and that kind of shifts the whole axis of their team because it means Jaren Jackson has to play the 5, and also talk about the loss of Steven Adams, who's a big physical presence in there, and also leading into it. I think he's kind of the emotional leader of this team a little bit, and when you see that he's
a young
missing,
core, it's a big young core.
And I think they're kind of emotionally a little bit immature when it comes to these. And I think I thought it last season as well in the playoffs when they were, hitting the gritty against the Timberwolves when they, should have probably lost that series. And obviously the whole thing with the Warriors, they done well to get that series as far as it did, to be honest. But there was a lot of smack talk in there, and then there's a whole Dylan Brooks thing, which is another angle from it. I don't really care that much about the poking bears type of thing because I think the Lakers were just locked in, and I don't think that a Dylan Brooks comment is going to make LeBron go supernova. If I'm quite honest, it's the playoffs and it's LeBron James. That's what it is. But he is also unfortunately, probably one of the leaders there, one of the older guys, and I just think they lose themselves in games sometimes, especially offensively. And if you look at the points totals there. It was a 40-point blowout. That's not, sugarcoat it. They got absolutely dismantled. They got chased out of the arena. So there needs to be some adjustments there. I think not every game needs to be this big sort of statement like they think it is, like the whole world's against them. That's the one thing I will say. But I also do think they need a piece, like another scoring piece. And I know there was the OG Anunoby rumors trade deadline time, and I think that would have been decent for them. Not that I think it would have got them over the line here, but someone who can hit a shot more reliably than they have going on here a little bit, and obviously bring some defensive presence as well. But if Steven Adams isn't going to be reliable next season as well, I think they're going to have to get a big, because I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is better placed when he's roaming and he's in that power forward position. Completely. But regardless, the Lakers deserve this quite thoroughly in the end. And I think that game, the game 5 was a kind of out of character for them. I'm not sure if they're kind of easing the foot off the gas. Like I said last week, I think one of the bigger concerns I have for them is the health of LeBron and AD going forward. And they're going to need to manage that, obviously, but they've got a big series up next, and I don't think that's quite as possible.
No, my takeaway from this is basically that, they're going to have some off-season moves with everything going on with their contracts with Dylan Brooks and a few things like that. A big one will be with Steven Adams as well in terms of his reliability and health moving forward. But, you've got Jar and you've got Jaren Jackson Jr. Just build around those two. That is
Desmond Bain. Desmond Bain was one of the players that actually impressed me this series for them, actually.
There were moments for it, but it's more of that. I think there's more pressing issues than if Desmond Bain is going to be at the level to play alongside in the future of a championship with Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant. I'm not necessarily sold on him. I like the Tyus Jones as a backup role.
Yeah,
I know Desmond Bain and him are different, but I would be more looking at sort of building pieces around that complement Jar and Jaren Jackson Jr. and they can play in their positions that you see the best out of them from. Not like this series where you had to see Jaren Jackson Jr. like you mentioned, Louis, playing at the 5 and not as well as he could at the 4. We'll move off of this series, as obviously we've now got it. We will speak about the Warriors in the kit. Oh, we touched on the Warriors in the kit. Did we touch on it? I'm actually remembering now. Am I bugging there?
We haven't talked about games.
We didn't talk about the actual series. Right, so run me through. So I got up to, I didn't see this. Actually, we'll talk about that after. I didn't see that. What did I see? I saw, Sunday the 30th, yeah. Run me through the game 7. Give me in sort of give me 2 bullet points, both of you. Lewis, you go first.
Right. Well, 2 each, or you want the one?
Yeah,
from
2
me?
each, 2 each, 2 each, 2 each.
Because the two is easy, right? So the first one is Steph is just absolutely unbelievable at 35, like 50
Right, yeah.
No
Shock
one can
knows
stop
that
him.
one.
That was easy. And the other side, I think this is pretty straightforward. The other side is the Kings in that second half were absolutely terrible. And like at the half time, everyone thought, "Oh, Sabonis is having a pretty good game." I think at half time he was 16-5-5, and at the end of the game he was 16-8-7. So
Oof.
that shows you
Did
how
he
much
get foul
production he gave over the second half. Yeah, he did, and so did De'Aaron Fox. I think they both ended with 5 or 5 and 4. But
Louis
the
might
Kings
have-
absolutely choked the second half.
He might have stiffed you there, so I want 2 alternative bullet points that isn't
Yeah,
Steph's
no.
amazing and Sabonis had a bad game.
No,
that's-
out of Sabonis, the whole team choked. The whole team
okay.
choked. It was not just Sabonis.
I mean, I can't give you too many different. I'll give you more specific examples, I guess. I think on the Steph point, I think he probably looked around and he was like, "No one has it today."
30. Yeah, I'm sorry, about to say I didn't look at the box score, but 38 field goals.
Well, I mean, that is also just to point out a record for a Game 7 in the NBA history.
Is
in
it?
the playoff
Right,
history?
okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
record amount of points scored. So, yeah, he looked around. Clay did not have it. And when he did get a field goal, Steph was celebrating like mental, looking at Wiggs, not feeling it either. And Draymond's Draymond. Jordan Poole is on the verge of unplayable at this stage. Like, legitimately, he's playing really, really badly.
So when you said unplayable, then I'm like, oh, is he bombed off? And then saw he took 9 shots. I was like, oh, you mean unplayable, terrible?
Yeah, he has been rubbish. Like actually rubbish. There is more there than we can see. Like the underlying issues that they had from the Draymond incident, some repercussions have come from that, because you can just tell, not even just him playing badly, just the body language of all the players. There's something wrong.
Yeah, it's not just. I think the other players are getting a little bit annoyed. I'm not sure if it was this Game 7 or the Game 6 before, which I was surprised that the Warriors didn't win at home in the Chase Center actually anyway, and close that series out there. But it was a clip of Steph saying about how, again, getting a bit too emotional. Other than that, he's just turning over the ball too much, not efficiently scoring whatsoever. I think my first one then. The other Warriors didn't have it, particularly Jordan Poole, and that's something to look towards in the future. I don't think Clay's going to have a bad game. Well, he was good this series on and off, but I don't think he's going to have quite as bad a game. But that's something to look at particularly. But the other thing I think I will say is that no Monk for the Kings couldn't get him going, and I think that's eventually what kind of tailed them off, because he's been the second best player of the whole series, and with I kind of guess extended workload he's had to carry, because De'Aaron Fox, you can say maybe choked in the second half, but I don't think he looked right with that finger, obviously.
Yeah,
which is a real shame.
That context in.
Yeah, which is a real shame, because he was having a great series, really sort of like a coming out party. And I don't think it's not a coming out party for him now. I think he's kind of proved himself to a certain extent. He'll obviously have to go and then take another step next year, but I think you can sort of count on him. I mean, he's had a better show than Ja Morant, let's just say that. So, yeah, and then, Kevin Hurt has not been playing well either. But that's what I would say. I think if they were going to win this game, Malik Monk was going to have to have another gamer, and he just didn't. So that's unfortunate. And I think they'll feel gutted, because they obviously were leading this series and were in sort of like a pretty imperious faction going into that Game 3, where Draymond is obviously suspended. You think, they could close this out pretty quickly here if they play their cards right. So it's a bit Sacramento-y to then falter, but it's Golden State. It's Golden State at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The thing I'm looking at here, and obviously I haven't watched this, but I mean, I know Kevon Looney was a bit of a monster on the board throughout the whole series. But if you're getting out rebounded by the Warriors, something ain't right. Essentially, something ain't right.
I mean, Looney,
and that's what's on the screen right now. The Kings' lack of defensive rebounding was painful to watch. You'll never win a game like that. That's a mental thing for me.
Looney had a massive series, and give him all the credit in the world, because I feel like he's been getting more recognition as the years have gone by, when people have picked up on it. But he really did a great job on Sabonis this series. And I saw at half time, because Sabonis was playing well. He was the Kings' best player in the first half, and a few people were tweeting like, "Oh, Sabonis is actually playing like he's the biggest man on the court for once." And then the second half came around, and it was like, well, it's back to a worse version of what we've been seeing throughout a few games in this series. And yeah, the Kings are a young team; they're a new team. They'll learn from this. They should get better. But yeah, this was a real opportunity. The Warriors, even though they are the storied team, they've got Steph, who is one of the best players in the world, and they've got such experienced players. They did have the tools to be able to win this series. It's just those minute details, along with, as I said before, Steph just being one of the best players in the world, just managed to push the Warriors over the line.
Well, it's going to be like, and I was actually just going to move on to this point because obviously we spoke about the Lakers already, and now we've discussed obviously the Warriors going through. I think Looney will struggle against the Lakers, be a completely different series. Yeah, I mean, Sabonis and AD are not going to be the same type of opponent for him, so that's going to be a whole different kettle of fish for him to deal with. But I mean, Warriors Lakers, that is the NBA. Adam Silver has absolutely had a field day with that one because that's going to pull in ratings like no tomorrow with the amount of Steph v LeBron marketing we're going to see now.
Yeah, and I think that's what we with the Lakers in every series. I think we always, or any matchup game, whatever you want to call it, we always say the X factor is what's the level AD is going to come at, and if he is playing like he was in that last series, although he might not have the biggest scoring numbers, he'll still be reliable for a decent amount of points, and he'll have a couple games where he'll go off. It's that defensive and physical monster that we want to see that we saw in the Grizzlies series against the Warriors. And if he does come like that and add some scoring as well, then that's just something that the Warriors cannot deal with. Looking the other way, obviously, Steph is something the Lakers can't deal with. So it'll be not only just them two, but what the role players and the other people in the unit, obviously LeBron being a star on the Lakers as well, swings it maybe a bit in their favour when it comes to that. But who is going to step up and be able to provide the team with enough to win those sort of gritty games where there's only a couple scores in it and it comes down to your turnovers, your offensive boards, how much effort you're putting in. I think that would really be the tell for the series.
Completely.
Yeah, you could say about the sort of like physical nature that the physical advantage that the Lakers have over the Warriors, which I think is fair. But the reason they have that physical advantage is that the Warriors can go smaller and they can push the pace a little bit, which is, I think, what the Grizzlies didn't quite do enough against the Lakers, because I don't think LeBron and AD want to be running, all the time. They don't want to make it a basketball game in a literal sense. They wanted to make it slow, grind it out a little bit more. So I think in that sense, the matchup may benefit the Warriors to a certain extent. I think I favour the Lakers actually a little bit, just because I think that physical nature and the list of guys that I trust on the Lakers and the list of guys that I trust in the Warriors. I mean, the Warriors one dwindles kind of every day, but the Lakers one kind of keeps extending as those games goes by because, you had your Rui Hachimura games really in a couple of those series, which is something we just weren't expecting. D'Angelo Russell was obviously really important in that game six closeout against the Grizzlies. I think we're still yet to see a Malik Beasley nice little one there. Dennis Schroeder can come with a big game. I just think they have more players, and it's kind of why I prefer the Nuggets as well against the Suns, which is another series. But I think I favour the Lakers there a little bit. But it's the same with every single series. I think if you extend the series a bit and make it more intense, get the Lakers really working, that's something that will go against the Lakers a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking for either one of those sort of whoever comes out of that. I'm not going to be like, wow, I can't believe they didn't win. I think that's just going to be a great series. It is going to be a matchup of sort of obviously your big stars are going to have a big piece of this, but the Lakers' sort of depth has almost been more impressive than what we've expected of the Warriors, and that's what's been a core thing of the Warriors winning chips and the recent success that they've had. So it's going to be a fascinating watch. The only bad thing is it's going to be really unfortunate for us to watch it UK time-wise is the only thing that comes with it.
Cali is just mud.
Yes, it's absolute mud. Right, I didn't get to see this game as I was away, like I mentioned before. So give me, actually, I just want one sort of, I want a headline from the both of you here. Just brief, sum it up for me. Lewis, you go first.
One. Well, there's a certain person I think I wanted to talk about a lot, but I'll spin more on the positive side and just say Jamal Murray is him. We'll go with that.
Okay, Jamal Murray's him. Louis, what's yours?
Going on the more positive side, I guess I'll just say what I said last week. The Suns have about 3.5 players, and it's
going on the positive side and comes up with the Suns have 3.5.
No,
players.
I mean I was going the opposite route, which
okay, right.
kind of gives because you could just go for the obvious, and I think the obvious there is a critique of DeAndre Ayton, but I think it's a wider issue than just him.
It was,
I think, So that would be my one quick takeaway. But I think there's more to talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one thing that I saw, because again, I've not even seen the highlights of these games. Like, if I can't watch a game or watch any of the playoffs, I'll at least see highlights and then have an understanding of where the positives and the successes and the negatives come from. The only thing I've seen all over Twitter is that pretty much in no uncertain Louis terms that DeAndre Ayton was a bum that game and he got absolutely roasted for it. And that's it. That's all I saw.
Yeah, I mean, the one play that really encapsulated the game that was doing the rounds on Twitter was where like Jokic just missed a shot and he managed to grab like 3 offensive rebounds in a row and try and tip them in. He didn't even get a field goal.
Try for it.
But while it's going on, you just see DeAndre Ayton off the side, just staring at it while it's going on. And that really encapsulated what went on that series. If you look at the overall stats after the game, Jokic had the same amount of offensive rebounds as the entire Suns team. If that is the case, then that is an issue. He had 14 rebounds at half time. It was just like the extra effort plays weren't being made by the other team. And even though KD got his and Booker got to an extent, I can't remember how many Booker.
They both had good games.
19. They had good games. There was still just little sloppy things that they needed to improve, like the extra effort plays to try and stop those offensive rebounds and get more boards. The turnovers and the steals were mental. I think there were so many Nuggets players that had like 2-3 steals each. And I think it ended up being 14-4. If a team's getting 14 steals on you, only getting 4 on them, and they're crashing you on the balls as well, you're not winning that game. And KD, even though he had a big game scoring wise, he had 7 turnovers himself, which is just not good enough. And does it come down to maybe, as Louis said, the fact that just having more guys means you can keep that level of intensity up, as opposed to the Suns, where if you're Kevin Durant and you want to be scoring mainly, but you're also your team's best defender, it just does wear down on you over the game. And these little plays are then what makes the difference. If that's the case, and you have Jamal Murray, if he can be consistent like he was, or be consistently great like he was that game, then I think the Nuggets are going to win the series. So some things definitely have to change for the Suns, and they were my pick as well, because I did think that KD and the scoring of Book would carry him over the line. But if they can't work these things out, then that's just not going to be the case.
I mean, like, I saw this and I saw you guys start talking about it in our chat that we've got, and like Sam's mentioned here, Booker played 40 minutes, sat at the last 6, still nowhere near. I assume with the last 6 to go, the game was done. Like, they're not going to take Booker out when there is a chance. I haven't seen it.
No, it was done. Yeah,
it's all done, right? Yeah. So you're gonna sit Booker out for it there. But it does seem a bit of an overreaction in terms of, I get it was a drumming, but it's what the Nuggets were meant to do. Like, you win your home games, so it's not that deep. I don't feel.
I think it was just the way they did it. So say, for example, and I'm not saying the way they did it means they're going to win the series. It's just there was things that there was more to critique, because if it was just a game where Jamal Murray had a big game like he did, but also Jokic had a huge game, because Jokic, even though it was kind of like the game before, the closeout game against the Timberwolves, it wasn't as bad stat wise, like shooting wise, but he wasn't as efficient as he usually is, but he did put up the numbers and had that massive rebounding game, which I think was the thing that stood out the most for him. It was just, there was the ways in which they lost the game and lost it so convincingly were the concerning parts.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things I would like to mention in there. I don't want to go like George. I don't want to overact too much on the game one. Yeah. I think there's obviously a bit of a danger of that, because the only evidence we have of this series is of this one game. And I think a lot of the stuff that I thought about the series going into it, because I picked the Nuggets when we did the bracket, and the reason I thought was because I don't think the Suns have enough guys, which I think kind of came to bore here. Defensively, KD is going to be the best defender of that team. That's a lot to ask of him. Again, he was doing dog's work, not even just mentioning that offensive rebound situation where Ayton was doing nothing. I think there was another particular play where KD does like an immense block on Jokic. Like, it's a really good block. And then Jokic gets the rebound again and puts it up again, gets the and one because Bismack Biyombo foul. It's kind of a bit like that.
Yeah.
It just feels like he is having to do a lot on that end. And I still don't think he's he's not playing badly on the offensive end, but I don't think he's playing to the fullest of his potential.
It's a lot to ask.
Yeah. They've not played many games together, which is one of the big reasons I didn't really fancy them either. I will say, first couple things, I think that they're kind of a bit too reliant on the mid-range, the Suns, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because KD, Book, and Chris Paul, when he's on it, are all mid-range specialists. But I think when they're giving away as many extra shots as they are in terms of offensive rebounding, like Lewis mentioned, the turnovers as well, they're going to have to take some threes. I mean, it would have been a miracle if they won this game, honestly, because they gave up so many extra shots to the Nuggets, and they're not taking the volume of 3-pointers to try and keep up with them as well.
Well, I mean, you're looking at that there. That's Booker, Paul, and Kevin Durant. Their 3 points. They made 2. They made 2 3-pointers as a 3. Yeah. Jamal Murray made more on his own. So it's like, you're right. In today's NBA, it's impossible like that.
6 threes, wasn't it, for Jamal Murray? I think it was.
6 or 10, I think you went.
Yeah. Aaron Gordon also had a bit of a game as well. I think not another. Yeah, I mean, going on to the point of not having enough players. I think when Jokic was off the court, that the Nuggets extended or
they were
like 9 points.
I think they were a +9, without Jokic on the court,
which is pretty massive.
Yeah, and if you looked at what the Nuggets team was like last season when they were in the playoffs and got bounced, if someone, loads of people have done it, where they put a side by side about the players that were in that series getting serious minutes for them and where they are now, and then you look at the team they've got now, the whole squad is so much better than it was. And if they can keep pace with or push up while Jokic isn't on the floor, then it's just a massive bonus to them. But as I said before, if we can see more intensity from Ayton and some of the sloppiness taken away out of the Suns' game,
it'll be close.
Then I think, then we'll definitely have a series on our hands. And as you say, that's just one game. So, next game that could happen. They could steal one, and then you're looking at it and saying Suns stole the game off the Nuggets at home. They're looking like the favourites, and they might go through. So they probably will go through if that's the case. But we'll just have to wait and see how these things turn out.
I do agree. I think those 2 games in Arizona are going to be pretty key. But I think this was kind of confirmation of what I thought going into the series. I'll shout out a little KCP, a little Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown was really good in this game as well.
Yeah,
and Braun's been really quite important to them as well. So, I mean, I've just reeled off 3 from the Nuggets here. I couldn't even tell you someone from the Suns that actually done something.
Well, the Suns are giving Shamit minutes in a playoff game, so it's sort of saying everything. But he won't even get minutes towards the back end of the regular season. So there is some. Again, I've said this before. I don't think that anyone's going to have a lot. I mean, if they get swept 4-0, there's probably going to be some cause for concern. But the Suns were in a. No, I know, they're not going to. But the Suns were in a precarious position where, if they won, it was like, oh my God, you've got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and you've won. Oh my God, congratulations. But if they lost, it was going to be, they've played like 15 games together.
Yeah, they've got an easy out. They've got an easy out
for next week and stuff like that. So there is, like I said as well, for me, this series will depend on game 3. And if the Nuggets get that initial steal in their court, and then that's going to be where this series just is made and matched from. I fully expect the Nuggets to go 2-0 up. I don't think anyone will be expecting the Suns to necessarily come out, especially with the whole thing that everyone knows are going and playing away in Denver and everything like that. I think this
Game 7 will be in Denver.
The Game 7 will be in Denver. Yeah. That's going to be the thing for the Suns, is stealing a home court.
Yeah, it's one of those things though where you can never count out Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. Basically, like, I can say I fully expect the Nuggets to go 2 up, and I do. But any given night, Kevin Durant or Devin Booker can drop 50 on them. So
you're not wrong. This is the beauty of the playoffs and what we've also seen so far. Quick one from Sam. Clippers are similar to the Suns in terms of mid-range shooters, Westbrook and Kawhi. The sound, I want to assume you've said
Suns.
The Suns are more efficient, so they edge. And with Denver, they have a lot more 3-point shooters. And that's the issue at the moment. Not necessarily is the be-all and end-all, but but it just necessarily is the issue with this current Suns roster and how it's sort of currently built around him. I think it will change next year in the offseason when they know that CP3 has got one more year in him, maybe at a push, and then you've got KD and Booker. They're probably going to look to move Ayton on, like you said, Louis. They're probably regretting playing him, but it's what it is.
Yeah, it depends what you get back for him, really, at the end of the day. I mean, I know he's not playing great, but
no one's questioning there isn't a player.
High.
Yeah, no one's questioning there isn't a player there, but it's not to the extreme of which the Ben Simmons case was in Philly with the Hawks. But there might be a case that comes across where it's just like they need to move away.
It does get to a point though. Is he not get like sort of annoyed with people sort of talking about him or like the lack of aggression that he should like? He's getting clowned on.
Yeah, it's what motivates the player. But you look at the last series against the Clippers, and Ayton did have a couple of games where this same thing was said. I think we said it as well in a previous podcast. But overall in that series, I did think he upped the intensity quite a bit in some of the games, and to the point where it would be not serviceable, but it wouldn't be as much of a problem as it was in that game one. Like if it plays out like the Clippers series did, then I would say it should be okay, but because the Suns are not the Suns, because the Nuggets are just a much better team than the Clippers are, maybe you can't afford to have the 2 games that he had in the Clippers series, because if that game's game 3 at home against the Nuggets, and that's what pushed the Nuggets over the line, then you're probably done for. So I don't want to be too harsh, but at the same time, if you have championship aspirations, you have to pick up on these things and sort them out when you're playing against the level of competition that you are.
Yeah, indeed. Right, we'll move over now to the other series. We'll talk about Miami and the Knicks. Miami still being the team that is upsetting everyone, even though the Knicks are doing very well. I don't think a lot of people necessarily would have thought game 1 MSG, the Heat are going to come in and take it. I think the Knicks coming through with that momentum that they carried from beating the Cavs in a pretty dominating manner, I would say. This may have been a surprise. Obviously, the Miami Heat still without Tyler Hero, so literally is named mainly Jimmy Butler. But by the looks of it, we got a Kyle Lowry remontada.
It was a gamer. It was a gamer.
Looks of it, it was a Kyle Lowry remontada. And Gabe Vincent's been streaky throughout the regular season. That he's shown that he's got qualities, but never to sort of necessarily be like, I'm going to put 20 up tonight. Is this more of that it was Miami being really good or the Knicks being bad? Where is the sort of in between, would you say, from this game?
I don't know if it's a case of good or bad. I will say about the Gabe Vincent thing, he was actually doing absolute bits at the start of the game. He really petered out. But at the start, he was kind of the guy for like the first quarter or so, I think.
But that's what you'd want, surely, though, because you want to. Jimmy can't do this he can't do it for 48 minutes a night or whatever he's playing.
Yeah,
so if you can save him towards the back stretch and you have guys that get hot early. That's what
He ended up 6 and 16, but he was 5 and 12 from 3. So, most of them are the 3-point shots. His 3-point percentage wasn't that bad. And actually, that is a good point. Kevin Love hit a couple of big shots in that game as well. He gave some decent production that we didn't think he was really going to be able to give them once they got him. But this was kind of another one of those. Whenever the Knicks are in a game, it seems like it's just a really gritty series. And I think towards the end, the game just started kind of going away from him a little bit. I think it was around where it was in the 70s to the 80s where you started to see Miami take over a bit, and then when it got from the 80s onwards there, I think you see that sort of position and you look at Jimmy Butler and you think, the Heat, they've probably got the chance to take this home
The
now.
way I thought my internet went then.
No. I mean, this series was not one I was particularly looking forward to for the ways that you mentioned. It's kind of the complete opposite to the Kings, the Kings Warriors, where it's like beautiful fluid offense. Everything's, and then you got this. And it's like a rock fight. It really is, but in a weird way, that's also kind of entertaining. And obviously, I said it last. If there's anyone to go into MSG and rip the soul out of that arena and not really care about the outside influences that Donovan Mitchell seemed to maybe get affected by a little bit, it's obviously Jimmy Butler. But I do think this was the Kyle Lowry game. You really closed it out for them in the end when I know you said Jimmy didn't I'm not sure if he'll play the next game, but for the last couple of minutes there, he was like a decoy. He was like they didn't use him.
That's a good point. Yeah, I know I said before you looked at Jimmy, but I just remembered he's sitting in the corner for the end of the game because he couldn't really move. Yeah,
he was looking a bit sick. So we'll see how that goes. But I wouldn't be surprised if they sort of look back and they're like, well, we got one at MSG. We split the series there, and we can make sure and get him right for game 3, and then we can go on from there. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But obviously, there's no Julius Randle here, and with I've got a mixed relationship with Julius. Sometimes it's a bit too hearable, but I think he could have been used here a little bit. And they've done a good job with Brunson, I do think. And 11, 23, 25 points, not too bad a game. But they've done decently in sort of like building a little bit of a wall around him defensively, trying to force the ball out of his hands a little bit more. And Josh Hart there, he says 5 for 12, which in isolation wouldn't think is too bad. He went 0 for 4, which is kind of unlike what we've seen from him in the playoffs from 3-point range anyway. He hit a couple air balls, in fact, which, again, kind of sucked the air out the arena a little bit. But I think, if Julius Randle's not going to be there, and he wasn't really looking right in the last series anyway, I think you're going to need a bit more from a guy we haven't seen all playoffs, actually, and who was, in running for 6th man of the year anyway, which was Emmanuel Quickly. He would go through stretches of games in the regular season where he's looking like the best player on the court, and it's just not been the same since the past, and I'm not sure why that is, why they haven't been able to get him going, or why he hasn't been able to get himself going. Maybe it's not a systemic issue and more, mental. But, positive to take from this, I would say, is that RJ Barrett, you can see there, had himself quite a decent game, and I think he's kind of getting his mojo a little bit back. He was never, I don't think, the role player type of mentality player. He's been the best player in, I think, every single basketball. Most of these guys can say that, but him particularly, he's the best, highest high school recruit. Obviously played with Zion and Duke, which brought another level of pressure to it, which and another sort of complex situation where he wasn't the best player there. But if you know what I mean, I've always had a bit of RJ Barrett stocks, because I do think he's got the right mentality to be this type of guy. It's just that the shot has never really quite developed for him, and the shot didn't develop for him here. I'm not denying it.
No, it's
I think
not
he can
developed
score
for him. It's not developed, it seems, the entire playoffs. But
no,
I'm in agreement with you, Louis. I have a little bit of love for an RJ Barrett. There doesn't seem to be much love for him from any of the Knicks fans that I seem to speak to, but I do sort of. I quite like him. It's just that he should. I think there'll come a time where he'll realise that the 3-point shooting forte just isn't going to come for him. And he can hit 1 or 2 every now and then, but the volume he takes is necessarily not as efficient as he probably could be. Yeah. And that'll adapt and change. But for right now, how this Knicks team's set up, it's sort of what he needs to do as well.
And that's a good segue as well into another point, which is that the Knicks only hit 7 threes this entire game. So,
Jalen Brunson went 0-7,
in the modern era, if you told me by the end of the game only one team only hit 7 threes, I'm like,
it was more if you told me the Miami Heat almost doubled the amount of 3-point shots that the other team,
exactly.
You'd be like, what on earth has happened?
And I think Lou made a good point as well, talking about whenever Jalen Brunson was trying to drive in or he beat the first man, the Heat did a really good job of just packing the lane, just clogging it up and making it extremely difficult for him to really get to any spots or get to the rim. And in the games like those that happened where it was very gritty, those kind of stopping the easy points it really compiles and matters come the end of the game.
Exactly. Right. I think we spoke about every series that we've had now. I think we're all caught up.
Sixers Celtics.
Sixers Celtic. How could I forget about Sixers Celtics?
Maybe you won
Joel. I think you're foreshadowing there. The main one of that, I think Joel Embiid. I did see this. Joel Embiid, I know, is doubtful, obviously, with that knee sprain, and that they think it's worse than initially feared. Yet he was present at shoot around today. I don't think he'll play this game. I don't think they're going to risk him game. I don't think they're risking game 1 in the Garden anyway. But I saw that he was at shoot around, so I don't know where it's going. But
I saw game 1 and game 2. He's not going to play,
which would make sense in terms of if he's not 100% anyway, you wouldn't risk him in the 2 games that you would expect the Celtics to win anyway. So that's how I see this.
If you want a bit of hope, any Sixers fans out there was some great deep diving that someone decided to do on Twitter, and it was Embiid's been listed as doubtful 4 times. and he played in 3 of the 4 times they listed him as doubtful. So
What,
maybe he'll play in 1 or 2.
Or is that
it was
forever?
either this season or in the playoffs. I can't remember.
Well, I was going to say, if it's this season, from playing so if it's from this season, that man is listed questionable pretty much every goddamn game.
It was funny because they broke it down into doubtful, questionable, and there was something else, and it was how many times he's been named it and how many times he's actually played.
Yeah, I think the way in which the NBA injury reports are is like doubtful is you're not ruled out, but you're pretty much not going to play. Questionable, you're pretty much not going to play, but there's a chance. And then there's probable. And even probable, you can get late scratches. I think that's how it works for it. But in any case, I don't want to delve too much into this one because as well, I know Louis is off gallivanting. So we're going to wrap this one up in a fairly short manner. But just to where we've gone back and arch from our playoff predictions before, give me one sort of little bit of information how you feel this series is going to go, and then let me know your prediction for the Sixers Celtics. And we'll do this for the 4 that we've got left, and then we'll wrap this one up. So, Lewis, you go first. Give me a little bit of feedback on what you feel the series is going to be and your prediction in terms of the series.
Well, I think we've spoken about it before. Essentially, I just think that the matchup favours the Celtics. I think they've got enough bodies and the way they play defense to throw at Embiid, where Embiid will still, put up his stats, get his, but over the series it will take its toll on him. And I think overall, looking at the 2 sides, I trust the Celtics core and the people around them to be able to push them over the line, along with doing a decent job on Embiid. So for me, I would say Celtics in. I'll give Philly some. Well, I must say some love because I'm picking them to lose, but I'm going to respect and say Celtics in 7.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, if I look at it in isolation, Embiid with a dodgy knee coming into a playoff series, I wasn't impressed by Sixers in the last round. If I'm quite honest, I'm not entirely on board with the Harden experience either. I think he's kind of coming to like where he was as a player, a bit on the downward slope, shall we say. Not got that same explosiveness to get around someone, not getting as many foul calls, which is how he made his name. Let's be honest, call a spade a spade. And so it's a lot of on Tyrese Maxey, I feel like, in the games where Embiid isn't going to play. And the games where he does play, I can see him just not being right as kind of per with Embiid when it comes to the playoffs and not even trying to take a shot there. We've just never had a fully fit Embiid in the playoffs, which is a shame, but it is what it is. So, and I think, like Lewis says, I think the Celtics are a bad matchup for him. I think they can push him in transition as well, which is another way that you can get the Sixers a little bit, because Embiid and Harden and that overall team aren't going to be wanting to run, and Tobias Harris trying to guard Tatum. I mean, we'll see how that goes. There's probably worse people you could get to guard him anyway. But I think I might go for a gentleman sweep here personally. And the only reason I'm cause for concern and maybe give it a 6 would be like I'm not entirely convinced by Joe Mazzulla coaching the Celtics. I think there were some odd decisions in that Hawks series, and that Hawks series shouldn't have gone on as much as it did. But I'll present you this question as well. Is, like I said, posing to you, Embiid not playing those first couple of games, and he's a bit dodgy with his knee. Is that really that much of a harder challenge than what they had with the Atlanta Hawks? I think that Atlanta Hawks team's quite good. It's just that they've got some systemic issues coming from Trae.
Yeah. But what you're talking, if the Celtics have got a much more of a tougher opponent than the Sixers without an Embiid.
With like the context of everything, yeah,
it would be on if Embiid, how well Embiid if he comes back. So this is my thinking would be misses one game, maybe plays the second one or misses the second one. I'd expect the Celtics to win their 2 home games anyway. So if Embiid can come back after that and be at least like 90%, maybe it wanes as it goes throughout the series, then I still think the Phillies are harder matchup than the Hawks.
The thing for me with this series, obviously Joel Embiid is going to dominate the headlines and his health and everything from it. But if we play under the assumption that he misses the first 2 games but comes back like 90% for the Celtic for game 3, it's going to be on if Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey play well in that game for me. Because Embiid will get... I know we've had this thing before of has Embiid ever had that sort of great playoff series and all this? Embiid will get his shots. Harden will play well. It's going to be more, and I expect the same of Brown and Tatum. It's going to be more on that sort of other unit. And for the Sixers, Harris was good in the net series, but when it's come to these sort of situations, is he going to do the same sort of stat line and play in the same manner? that he did before. The same thing with Tyrese Maxey for me. That's where it's going to come down to it, because I don't doubt the quality of those 4 that I prior mentioned, but it's going to be this issue. And also, we've got the Embiid Al Horford thing back. If he gets locked up by Al Horford at this time, then there's no way for it. But on my side of things, I would have been I was optimistic for it, and I'm gonna look here. I'm gonna say I'm still optimistic in a Sixers game 7. But if something, don't bet on it is all I'm gonna say. Right, we'll move on to the other semi-finals then. We've spoken about it already, but we'll just go for a quick run up again. Suns Nuggets, same format. Lewis, give me a little bit on there, and then also your prediction. Same thing for you, Louis. Lewis, you go first.
Basically, the Suns need to clean up any of the sloppiness and the turnovers. They need to up the intensity. And Kevin Booker, I just said Devin Booker. Or I knew something was wrong there. Just took a couple of seconds for me to realise what I said. Yeah, I need Devin Booker and Kevin Durant to just take their turns, go nuclear, which they're more than capable of. And hope, Jamal Murray needs to be consistent for Denver. They need their role players to step up like Aaron Gordon did. And like they did with some clutch steals, and Jokic needs to just play like himself, and we'll have an unbelievable series. I'm not going to stray away from, even with that game 1, I'm not going to stray away from what I said before the series started. I picked the Suns, so I'll go Suns in 6, because I'm not going to lie, if it goes 7, then I just think Denver are going to win. So I'll just say Suns in 6.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of sticking with my prediction that I had prior as well. I think Denver have a better overall team, and I think the Suns could overcome that if they had had the time to learn how each other plays. If they had learnt the sort of rotations and how it works with this shallow team that they have right now over like the course of a season, I'd be a bit more confident in saying, the Suns could do it, and they can do. They've obviously, I'd say, got slightly the best player in the series, but I think Jokic is kind of coming up there. He was great in this game, and I want him to have his moment more than anything. Maybe this is sort of like an emotional type of thing, because you know what everyone would say if he were to go out at this stage. But the Suns were favoured coming into this series, which surprised me, considering that the Denver have the game 7 in their house. And I think of all the advantages that I've said that Denver have, I think will just bear fruit eventually. I'm trying not to sort of lean too much on that game 1, because there will be moments and times if the Suns don't win that game 3, that'd be unbelievable. They're definitely going to win that. So I think game 4 is probably the one I'd look out for more, actually. I'm going to still say, I think I said Denver in 6, and I still think that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think when I did mine originally, I might have said Suns in 6, but and I know I've mentioned that game 3 for me is the main one. I know that obviously game 4 is going to be big as well, but from what we've seen, and then like listening back to what we've spoken about before, and then also seeing it happen, there is some actual cause for concern that if Booker, with KD having to play it so well on both ends, if he's going to be capable of doing it consistently in more than 1 or 2 games in this series. So I'm still going to say Suns in 6, but I am now being like, yeah, maybe the Nuggets are just going to be a bit too strong for them this year. We'll move on to the other 2 then. Heat Knicks. I'll go first on this one. I do think that this is just, like I've said, I from after the Jimmy stuff, he just seems to be a bit more dialed into it. I think the Knicks will come back hard this one. If Jimmy's a little bit hurt as well, then you're going to see, if Jimmy's out of this game, there isn't even a debate on what's going to happen from it. But the Knicks will come back with a big response, and then it will go again. And this is how it'll go. I am going to say Heat in 6. Just from, and this is on the production, obviously, of a fit Jimmy Butler that's coming into it. But the Heat just seem to be on such a momentum bandwagon from coming off the Bucks game, and Jimmy's playing so well, then it's going to go from it. But yeah, what are your 2 thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments. To be honest, I'd say Heat in 6 as well. I just think Jimmy's been the best, or maybe you can make an argument for someone else, but I'd say Jimmy's been the best player in the playoffs. I don't think that's controversial. I think most people would say Jimmy's been the best player in the playoffs. And against this Knicks team, and with all the momentum the Heat have had, I trust them to get it over the line. Obviously, with him potentially missing a game, then I wouldn't say it's going to be too quick a series. And I do think the Knicks do tend to make series and games just quite hard. You're never going to get an easy win. So I'll say Heat in 6.
I think I'm going to actually no, I'm going to go one less. I think that the Heat might win in 5 here. I just sort of look around a little bit, and maybe the Cavs series has kind of clouded my mind a little bit because they really did crap the bed, the Cavs in that series. But I just don't coming into this. I didn't know how the course of action where the Knicks to win a playoff series. I just didn't think they had the level of offense that was sustainable enough to win a playoff series, and they sort of kind of put that to bed with the Cavs. But it comes back a little bit here in terms of where if the Heat, who are probably a better defensive team than the Cavs are, can sort of really game plan against Jalen Brunson. I'm not sure what else they have. And, Julius Randle is obviously a big wrinkle in that, but I'm still a little bit concerned about how they'll get the points necessary to beat the Miami Heat, which sounds crazy because we wouldn't have come into this being like the Miami Heat is some proficient offensive system that you need to keep up with. But like George said, they've got a wave of momentum right now. So I think this might be over more quickly than we thought. But again, this could be me taking way too much from a game one.
So we got Sam saying Celtics in 5, Nuggets in 7, Warriors in 7, Miami in 5. We have left the last conference semi-finals here, the Showtime one, the NBA's special, the Lakers Warriors. Where are you going to go with this, Louis? I'll go back to you first.
I fancy the Lakers in this one personally. I think I fancy it in 6. Again, I mean, it's just a case of I'm still not entirely sure about this Warriors team, even though they just came out of a grueling series where they've really played some high-level offensive basketball. There's just something about the makeup of this team and how I'm sort of trusting less and less guys as the series and these games go by. And it's kind of coming up against sort of like Steph against the world. And I mean, we've got to give some shout out to Rob Pelinka. He's absolutely restructured that Lakers team mid-season. And fair enough, I didn't think it was good enough at the time or like something that would really elevate them, but it just has done. They're just a great overall team now with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So, if you've got a great team with those two players, that can take you anywhere. So I'm going to go for Lakers in 6, yeah.
Howard?
Yeah, I think this is this and the Nuggets one are probably the two that I'll be least confident in. Well, I pick the Suns, but Suns and Nuggets series. I think it will come. I think the two things it will come down to is one, how productive on both ends is AD going to be in this series, because I really just don't see an answer for him on the Warriors side. And secondly, how much of the load is Steph going to have to carry? Because if he has to perform like he did in the Game 7 against the Kings, then I think the Lakers will win the series. You just can't have, literally, other than Kevon Looney, literally no one giving you production against a team like the Lakers with the vets and the star players they have on that team. I do think Steph's the best player in the series. And, it is the Warriors after all, but I'll go the Lakers in 6 as well.
Now, this is tough because I don't want to bet against LeBron, but I don't want to bet against the Warriors in these situations. And they've shown, even though it was a Game 7, even though it was against the Kings, you still thought, it's a Game 7, the Warriors get to it. If it gets to a Game 7, I'm going to look at the Warriors for it in this situation. It's if the Lakers can stop it from going to a Game 7. And it is then dependent on Anthony Davis. And if I'm betting on AD to have good games, you're flipping a coin with how he's been performing in the playoffs. He has one good one and then one off night. I do think, though, like we mentioned before, something that we used to rely on with the Warriors with being the strength in depth now seems to be almost in the favor of the Lakers, which is a mental statement where we've seen the Lakers been for the past 2 years. So I'm gonna go Lakers in 6. But if it goes to a 7, then I'm going Warriors. It's a cop-out answer, I know.
Yeah, but I think everyone who picked the Lakers in 6 would probably agree with that, though. I think if it did go 7, most people would side with the Warriors.
Yeah, I think that's how we'll be it. But the Miami Heat making a conference finals is one of the turn-offs of, and it will be the same thing with the Lakers. If the Lakers make it with how bad they've been, it's another turn-up for it. And the same with the Warriors. There's so many narratives that is now going to come out of this season that is nuts to happen, and that's how good this NBA season has been. We've just hit the hour mark. Is there anything you two have left to say for this one?
No, I think we've covered all the series. The only thing I'd say is it will be interesting to talk once this season's done. I saw the provisional list of the free agents and the players with player options this year, and it's actually enormous. So
Yeah,
the moves this off season are going to be probably, I don't know about the best they've been in a while, but there's definitely going to be a lot to talk about.
indeed. Louis, anything from you?
No, not particularly. I echo the sentiments. It'd be wild to see the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals because we haven't really talked about much this season because it's just been so putrid. Just like, and I thought it was all over after they'd lost that playing game, obviously. So it's pretty crazy to see. Like, I'm not sure when the last 8 seed run to a conference finals was, but yeah, it's exciting to see, definitely.
It definitely is indeed. Right, there'll be a little bit of a catch up from when we next record. As we've mentioned before, Louis is jetting off somewhere. So we'll be back probably around late next week just to run through everything NBA, maybe in time for some conference finals. If you're here on watching this live, or if you're watching it slightly delayed or on catch up and you're wanting for some So Rare news, I'm going to do a live video on this YouTube channel at Swingman Pod in around 45 minutes time, I would say. So I'll put all of that on the socials as well. But for myself, for Louis Halpin, and for Lewis Howard, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.